At 3:11 in the morning, my front door exploded and 12 armed officers stormed my house. But the real shock? The person who called them was my wife.
At exactly 3:11 a.m., my world cracked open. I remember the time because my bedside clock glowed in the darkness, those red digits burning into my memory the moment the front door exploded inward. The crash wasn't just loud, it was violent, final, like something you don't come back from. Then came the shouting. "Police! Search warrant! On the ground!" I was still half asleep, trying to catch up with reality. One second I was in bed, the next I was being dragged onto the floor. Bare feet, cold wood, hands forced behind my back. "I'm cooperating," I said, my voice steady in a way that surprised even me. But that calm wasn't accidental. It was trained. Years of military discipline had wired me to stay level-headed when everything turned chaotic. Steel cuffs snapped tight around my wrists. A knee pressed into my back. My face hit the floor. And strangely, in that moment, I noticed the smell of lemon polish, something my wife used every Sunday. That's how the mind works under pressure. It grabs the smallest, most irrelevant details while your life is being dismantled. Then I heard it. A scream. My daughter. 6 years old, terrified beyond comprehension. "There's a child in this house," I shouted. "Keep weapons away from her room." An officer confirmed she was safe, but it didn't matter. The damage was already done. No child forgets that kind of fear. They pulled me up and marched me through the hallway. My daughter frozen in bed, clutching a stuffed toy, eyes wide with panic. I tried to reassure her, but I was dragged past too quickly. In the kitchen, my stepson stood there, confused and angry. "Stay with your sister," I told him. "Call the judge. His number's on the fridge." He nodded. 17 years old, but in that moment, he looked older. Outside, the entire street was awake. Flashing lights painted the houses red and blue. Neighbors stood watching, some curious, some shocked. And then I saw her, my wife, standing calmly at the end of the driveway, recording everything on her phone. Not crying, not panicking, just filming. That's when something shifted inside me. Because after years of investigating people, I recognized one thing instantly. She wasn't surprised, not even a little. And that meant one thing. I wasn't caught in a situation. I was placed in one. They pushed me into the back of the patrol car, and as the door shut, I realized something chilling. This wasn't chaos. This was planned. But the real shock didn't come from the arrest. It came from what they accused me of just minutes later. The ride to the station felt shorter than it should have. 14 minutes of silence. 14 minutes of thinking. Because this wasn't random. You don't get a pre-dawn raid without serious allegations. A judge had signed off. Evidence had been presented. Someone had built a case against me. And they had done it well. At the station, everything felt sterile and detached. Bright lights, quiet halls, officers moving like it was just another shift. To them, it was. To me, it was the beginning of something far bigger. They processed me quickly. Fingerprints, photos, then straight into an interrogation room. I'd been in rooms like that before. Just never on that side of the table. A young officer avoided eye contact as he handed me water. "What are the charges?" I asked. He checked his clipboard. Fraud, money laundering, conspiracy. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so deliberate. Those weren't random charges. They were calculated, specific, designed to destroy a person's life completely. I asked for a lawyer. Then I waited. Time stretched. Minutes felt heavier. But something was happening outside that room. I could see it in the way officers moved, in the way they glanced toward me. Confusion, then tension, then realization. At 4:12 a.m., the door opened. A detective walked in. Older, experienced, the kind of man who had seen everything. He sat down, opened a file, and started reading. I didn't watch the documents. I watched him. Because faces tell the truth long before words do. At first, he looked focused. Then, his expression shifted.
Subtle,
but clear. His eyes paused, went back, read the same line again. Then he looked at me. Really looked at me. And everything changed. "Remove his cuffs," he said. The officer hesitated. "Now." The cuffs came off. The room went silent. Then the detective leaned forward and asked something that completely flipped the situation. "Did someone try to set you up?" Just like that, I wasn't the suspect anymore. I was something else, something far more dangerous. "Yes," I said calmly. "I believe they did." But the moment I saw the evidence file, I realized this wasn't just a setup. It was a carefully crafted betrayal by someone very close to me. The detective slid the file across the table. 26 pages. Bank statements, transactions, client records. At first glance, it looked airtight. But I wasn't looking at what the documents said. I was looking at how they were made. 8 minutes. That's all it took. "These are fake," I said. The detective frowned. "How can you tell?" I picked up the first document. "Font," I said. "This bank uses a proprietary typeface. This one doesn't." Next page. "Date error. This transaction happened on a weekend. Wire transfers don't process on weekends." Then the final piece. The mistake that gave everything away. "My tax ID is wrong," I said. "Off by 1 digit." I set the papers down. Whoever made these had access to my records, but not complete access. The detective leaned back. "You're saying you know who did this?"
I do. I held his gaze. "My wife." Silence filled the room. That wasn't just an accusation, it was a detonation. But I didn't stop there. I explained everything. The anonymous tip, the prepaid phone, the printed documents. This was designed to trigger a dramatic arrest, I said. Public, damaging, permanent. The detective started writing fast now, because he understood. This wasn't just a bad case. It was a reversal. They hadn't caught a criminal. They had walked straight into a trap. And I wasn't the target of justice. I was the target of strategy. But uncovering the how was only half the story. The real question was why my wife would risk everything to destroy me. When my lawyer arrived, I laid it all out. Not just the setup, the motive behind it. "This isn't random," I said. "She's covering something." For months, I'd noticed small inconsistencies. Unexplained money, strange work hours, a second phone. Nothing obvious, but enough to raise questions. Now it made sense. "She's involved in fraud," I said. "Real estate manipulation, inflated appraisals." The numbers were staggering. Hundreds of thousands per deal, possibly millions total. And she wasn't alone. "There's an attorney involved," I added. "He's the link." By midday, everything started collapsing. For her. Security footage confirmed she bought the prepaid phone. Printer logs showed she created the fake documents. Financial records tied her to suspicious transactions. By the afternoon, the case had flipped completely. I wasn't under investigation anymore. She was. When I finally returned home, she was waiting. But not the way I expected. She wasn't prepared. She was shocked. Because she thought I'd still be in custody. "You're home?" she said. Frozen. "The charges didn't hold," I replied. Her expression told me everything. Fear. Not guilt. Fear of being exposed. "You should call your lawyer," I said calmly. Because it was over. She just didn't realize it yet. But the real confrontation wasn't about evidence. It was about facing the person who tried to erase me and hearing why. We stood there in silence. Years of marriage reduced to a single moment. "How much do they know?" she finally whispered. "Everything." And just like that, the fight left her. She confessed, not in detail, but enough. It started small, then grew, then spiraled. And when she realized I might uncover it, she decided to destroy me first. That's how these schemes work. They don't stop. They escalate until someone breaks. 10 days later, arrests were made. Her partner went down first. She followed. The charges against me were officially dismissed. Completely. But the damage? That doesn't disappear so easily. I was granted full custody. My daughter stayed with me. My stepson chose me. Not because he had to, because he wanted to. Months later, life feels different. Quieter. Stronger. More honest. The house is repaired. The door replaced. But I still remember that night. Not because of the fear, but because of what it revealed. The truth doesn't rush. It doesn't panic. It waits. And if you know how to look for it, it always wins. So here's the question. If everything in your life collapsed overnight, would you fall apart? Or would you trust yourself enough to uncover the truth?
Before you go, if you think this story was shocking, you need to watch this next one. Because what happened there was even more unbelievable. Tap the video on your screen right now.